I don't think so.
Beep beep.
I think this happened to Mitch McConnell last month. I think this happened to Mitch McConnell last month.
Isn't he down again, though?
Not hearing it. Lefty looks like he's hearing it.
Johnny, you hearing it? Okay, our guest is here. Hi, E. How are you?
I'm doing well. How's everybody?
Pretty good. How are you?
Well, that's subject for debate right now. I mean, you know, you might get different answers to that same question. Personally, good to see you. I don't think we've ever talked before. I know who you are, but Lefty's working on something.
He's in the weeds.
Yeah, this is why we like to have like a buffer zone between the time we actually get together and have somebody on to up our intelligence quotient on some things. I mean, we're basically
Just out of curiosity, do we have a time frame for the discussion? It was never. I just want to make sure I'm hitting things in time frames, etc.
yeah, right on. Right, Lefty?
How long are we going to be on? I think that's what he's asking.
Oh,
I'm sorry. We're live now. Welcome to the Ignorance is No Excuse podcast. Coming to you live on Thursday night from the underground bunker in New Jersey. And we have our guest. How do you say your name? Etienne?
Correct.
I can't.
You named it Lefty Etienne. It's French. It's French for Stephen. Oddly enough, it used
French
to be Estienne until the 17th century. Then apparently there was a prohibition of the letter S in my name, and so it became Etienne. So yeah, most people they pronounce it like the letters ATN. Growing up, it was usually AT&T until there was an automatic teller machine. Then I became ATM. So it's always different.
ATM.
That's what I thought you said.
Is that like the nickname for ATM?
It became it. That's what it became. It was originally automatic teller machines, but everybody, like the military, everything goes to an acronym initially once it becomes, traditionally used, and it's one of those odd nomenclature things that happens along the way. So,
well, my name, of course, my name's James. Nobody calls me James. I'm Jim. Does Etienne have a standard nickname like that, or
no? People are just they're usually terrified of pronouncing it wrong. So I grew up with a huge giggle for any substitute teachers who came through, because I knew where I was in line, and then I would just kind of sit there and like, okay,
Well,
let's see how they pronounce it.
your name is memorable. My problems with people that have names like mine, Jim, it's forgivable when they forget it, or calling Joe John or John Joe.
My stepdad was Joe Smith, so trust me, it was a family of complete and utter dichotomies at a certain resolve. So yeah,
interesting.
Yeah,
we're really looking forward to. You can tell us about things we know very little about, and I always find that it suits me quite fine.
Well, ask a question. I'm happy to answer.
Okay, so why don't you start out by telling us like how you started? You have the oldest dispensary in California, correct?
In the country.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, I originally came to cannabis in my teen years. I'd heard about it, but I grew up. I'm from Southern Louisiana. I'm Cajun. So that's why I have the funny name. So I was born in New Orleans, and then moved over into very rural Louisiana. And how rural? Well, my graduating class was 19 people, and that was public school. Whoa. So that kind of gives you an understanding of small, living out on a star route box. So I didn't have access to, drugs or anything like that. And I probably was, when I first heard about it, I had no idea what my friends were talking about. They asked if I had ever heard of a joint before. I was like, yeah, that thing in between my elbow and my, my arm. And no, man, it's pot. The thing my mom cooks with? And they're like, okay, this kid's square, leave him alone. And I initially then got turned on when I was 16. I was working, I volunteered growing up in rural Louisiana. There was no television, so we had to self-entertain. And I used to self-entertain by working at the little theater. And one of the stagehands I worked with, she turned me on to going out in the cane fields and smoking pot. But it was crap. So I really didn't get high. So I didn't really see the appeal of it. It wasn't until I graduated high school, left Louisiana, and ended up in West Virginia. And that was because my father was born blind, and he worked for an organization in West Virginia called the Job Accommodation Network. And that one basically got me a chance to be around him. They basically put handicapped people in touch with technologies prior to the internet, such as, hi, you're blind. I'm looking for a Braille fax machine. Well, they would then put you in touch with the companies that do that. So while going to college in West Virginia, I joined the West Virginia Army National Guard and quickly learned that the GI Bill made me, pretty poor. And I basically, all it did was cover tuition. So everything else I had to work for and cover. And I realized quite quickly as an art major that washing dishes was not going to cut it. So I started, I got turned on to weed by a friend, and then being in bands. And next thing I knew, I kind of became a weed dealer. And my first business was in West Virginia. It was an all ages club. It was called the Machine Shop, and it was a place for kids to gather and listen to hardcore punk music and stuff like that. And of course, it was easy to sell weed, of course, to bands coming through. It's kind of like, fish, shooting, fish in a barrel. It was pretty easy, but then I got activated because I was in the National Guard unit. It turns out the National Guard unit I was in was really good. And we got activated for Operation Desert Storm. And I found myself, I had 72 hours to pack up all my shit, say goodbye to my friends, family, write my will, and pass on my quarter pounds to my friends and say, okay, good luck. Hope I got money when I get back. And I went off to war. And I sustained injuries and found myself medevaced, shipped to Germany. And when I was Germany, I got addicted to the morphine because if you've ever been in a hospital, they're more than happy to give you as much drugs as you want. And being a combat veteran, they basically put a button in my hand and whatever you wanted. So anytime I had pain, went away really quick. And then I put myself through college to be an art major. And so I found myself sitting in bed and I couldn't think because the morphine is great for getting rid of the pain. However, I couldn't think, coordinate, or do anything else. So I ended up talking to my doctor, and my doctor recommended hashish.
Mhm.
And, initially, he laughed, then I laughed, then he stopped laughing. And then I realized, oh shit, I'm now a patient and I am now on a whole new journey in a whole other part of the world. And the doctor just recommended the equivalent of pot as far as I was aware. Didn't have hash in West Virginia, didn't really have hash access. And the little that I had was probably really low quality in the sense that, it was probably black with wax mixed in it, etc. However, I found myself being a patient and having to do drug deals in bathrooms and places that, you're not going to find your traditional medicines. Well, you can, but they're not listed and they don't come in a prescription bottle. So for me, I found myself scared and trying to navigate a situation where it was a wink and a nod, but it was my health. And I found myself, unfortunately, after coming back from Germany and being reintroduced back to school and back into society, I started wasting away. And I didn't know why. I was having abdominal pains. I would go to the state hospital and they're like, sorry, kid, we hear you. We don't know what's wrong with you. And it turns out I had what's called Gulf War syndrome, or now Gulf War illness. And that was, unfortunately, the unit that I was in was so forward that I got exposed to nuclear, biological, and chemical radiation. And when I sustained my injury, my boot was pulled off, and I ended up getting contaminated by all that. And I ended up with blisters on my right foot for 9 years. That wouldn't go away. I ended up with permanent neurological conditions, as well as chronic nausea and chronic pain. And I just didn't want to do anything. I just felt myself completely, I wasted away down to 90 pounds. And I was using cannabis to stimulate my appetite. And I didn't realize it was the only thing that was really putting something in my body, because I had no appetite. I had literally I could be sitting in a restaurant, everybody eating around me, and I had no desire to eat. It was the worst feeling and sensation. And I knew I had to, but for some reason, my body just wouldn't process. And I ended up going to the VA, the Veterans Administration Hospital. And I would say, hey, I'm using cannabis because of what I'm going through. And they're like, oh, sorry, security, remove this guy. And I was physically removed from 4 different VA facilities around the United States just for mentioning my medical cannabis use, not documenting, not anything else, because back then it was you were labeled what's called a known drug user because you were using medicine outside the VA system. And so therefore,
What year was that?
That was 93, 94, 95.
Okay.
And I got tired. It was in Oakland, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and San Francisco. And so fortunately, friends of mine who are veterans created what's called Directive 1315, which now allows you to talk to your doctor without in the VA without losing your rights or your access to medical health. So after, being kicked out of the VA for just talking about what was saving my life. And the last time I had actually traded for Marinol with a Vietnam veteran. And that Vietnam veteran, I was able to trade pot with, and the Marinol seemed to work more for travel, but I found it to be, holy shit, was that medicine inconsistent. And I was getting the 10s, and and people don't understand the simple cost of Marinol. For a bottle of 60 back then, it cost $1,500 just
Yeah.
for 60 pills.
My late wife had Marinol, Dronabinol, and she had I think it might have been the 10s too. It was a lot, and
were they orange? If they were orange, that's the 10s.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that would be the 10s. They're different colors. I think the 1s are whites and the 5s they're different colors.
It was too much for her. But there are other people who like the too much, THC.
It was inconsistent.
We trade it for bud. So basically, her prescriptions were $2,250 per month. We have a pharmaceutical program for aged and disabled that paid for that with a small $5 copay. And that was like some pretty expensive medicine.
Right. And my pharmacy initially rejected it, and I had to have my doctor go back and say, no, he needs it. This is what it's for.
But it's good. It was good for trading for some good bud. There were people that, and I found that to be a really circular route to what should just be a direct transaction.
Well, it also taught me, because as a patient, I had to go through and try it because I thought it was THC, right? And that what we also found out, it was the symbiotic relationship or the ensemble effect that takes place when the other cannabinoids, the terpenes, all of that have an effect. And that's missing because it's just a single molecule of delta-9 THC suspended in sesame oil. And if you put it in the refrigerator, it won't last a year. It will disintegrate. It self-disintegrates. The oil disintegrates at the seams. So it's one of those medications you have to use. But again, the simple cost, right, which is astronomical, and it was cheaper to get pot. So I learned that the medicinal cannabis that was available to me, i.e. dronabinol, sucked, didn't seem to work as well as the natural flower. So for myself, I got tired quickly of making criminals out of my friends who are my dealers, right? I found myself realizing that these people are at risk for my medicine, and that sucks. Trust me, it sucks because I get busted with my medicine. I got to deal with the legal repercussions. And I found myself quickly, I was able to join. I moved out to California after the war. I ended up, on the day of my promotion to sergeant, I got a positive piss test for THC. And I knew I had a positive urinalysis because I smoked before I showered to go to formation. And I was so proud because I was within 4 years to make sergeant. Is pretty not easy to do, but I served in combat. It was honorable. My service was solid. So, I was very proud. And I just remember it. I can hear it in my ears. Fontan, piss test. And it was the first time I'd ever felt sensation where my legs, I could no longer feel my legs. It was one of those, oh shit, kind of moments where I realized, oh, my entire military record is gone. Not only is it gone, I was expecting, because I had no idea, I thought I was going to be arrested. So I took a piss in the cup, and then I went out, and then I walked right out of the fucking National Guard unit, and I caught the first taxi. I didn't even stand in formation. I was just like, they're just going to arrest me. And I left in fear. And a friend of mine was like, hey, I'm starting a band. You're a bass player. Why don't you come out and join us? We're going to California. And I said, fuck it, let's do it. Because I had nothing really holding me in West Virginia. My dad had divorced and moved on with his life. And my other band,
it's a great pivot.
My other band that I had collapsed because the drummer had social anxieties. and couldn't play live outside. I mean, we could play like one place, our place, but if we played anywhere else, he would just pour in sweat so bad. It was so, he's such a talented guy. And I knew that the band wasn't going to go anywhere. If you don't have a drummer who can't play out, you know what I'm saying? It was just like, okay, there's really nothing holding me here. And I went to California, and in California, that's when I ran into Debbie Goldsberry, Dr. Todd McCorea, when the organization called the Cannabis Action Network had moved from Kentucky in 1992 to California. I happened to be there shortly after, and I went to the first meeting, and in the first meeting was Dr. Todd McCorea. And Dr. Todd McCorea, as far as I was concerned, was the person I was looking for. He was a registered psychiatrist. He whipped out this book, this compendium called the Medical Marijuana Papers, and my jaw hit the floor. I was just like, and immediately after, I struck up a conversation with him, and I was like, hey, I need to read your book. And he's like, here's a copy. I'm like, shit. And I was like, I'm a Go4 veteran. I've got these problems and I'm using cannabis. And he's like, oh, I document this stuff. Can I study you? I was like, and you're my doctor now. Outstanding. And, I would then spend the next 2 years in a baptism of surrounding myself with some of the most righteous activists in cannabis that ever existed. And I traveled with LV Musica through 40 plus states, doing rallies, teach-ins, and educational tours. I ended up doing 47 states where, we went to college campuses, rock and roll tours. We did Lollapalooza tour, Horde tour, all kind of ways of taking grassroots activism directly to the people. If you were at a rock and roll festival and saw the cannabis people in the 90s, that was us. We were all volunteers. And I was the richest I had ever lived, in the sense of everyone gave us weed, everybody treated us well, and I scored weed in all 47 of those states on top of that, because there weren't dispensaries and stores and stuff like that. So I got to travel with Dennis Perone, Jack Herrera, toured with Primus, Fishbone, Horde Tour, Lollapalooza. So and we're able to permeate the psyche of the youth, because the youth were totally into cannabis. Of course, the older culture was as well. The majority of the older culture, not so much. However, there was an existing culture that always reared its head wherever we went. And this is, of course, the early 90s, 93 and 94. So it was really dark times. It was the DARE years. It was when medical marijuana wasn't really around. And I was very fortunate that LV Musica ended up being kind of my mom and my guide. She toured with us. And if you don't know who LV Musica is, she was the first woman to successfully sue the government. It took her 12 years, and she won the right to medical cannabis. And medical cannabis, I have a tin. It's over here, one of her tins. And they pack it with 300 joints, and it's delivered by the DEA monthly for the rest of their lives. There used to be 22 people with that. Now it's only one, Irvin Rosenfeld. LV lives in a legal state, so she gets better cannabis there. The quality of cannabis that they get turned out to be astronomically horrific. So bad that when I was a pioneer in testing in the aughts for testing cannabis, I actually tested LV's cannabis, and it failed molds and mildews. And it came in about 4% THC. So, we just kind of wondered what it was. And it was probably just above a hemp varietal in that sense. But I would find out later that, Meshulam and them would actually grow it and then dry it on black plastic in the sun in Mississippi, and then grind it all up into a 55-gallon drum and let it sit until next series of rollings need to happen. And then they break it out, and there's an actual old Pall Mall rolling machine where they will roll the joints up and put in a tin. So I was very fortunate to have a very robust dive, because the first event I did with the Cannabis Action Network in 1993 was the 50th anniversary of LSD. and it was with the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies. So when I tell people, oh, I met everybody that I would spend the next 30 years reading about, I wasn't kidding, because everybody who was anybody came through, and I worked the front door. I literally took their tickets, and, you know, it was at the Unitarian Church in San Francisco. I met Ed Rosenthal and Mel Frank, all kinds of other, you know, luminaries that are throughout the drug war history. And it was just fascinated me that I found myself immediately accepted as a patient. And then I found myself speaking out as a patient, finding how well received people took that, because I was pretty scared initially to come out, you know, in the sense of once you're out, you know what I'm saying? And LV really helped by traveling with her, speaking before her or after her. She really taught me how to speak to crowds, how to really educate people, point them in directions, and affect change in a positive way, that I could use my experiences to connect with other people, not just, you know, individuals, but also with policymakers, with politicians. And I started to find myself having those types of discussions. My first lobbying was with Dr. Todd McCorea and Dennis Perone. They're like, come on, we're in DC, we're going to lobby. You're coming with us. We're going to go get you a button-down suit jacket, and we're going. And off I went. And holy shit, what I learned in that day watching Dennis Perone talk to, you know, senators and representatives in a way that you're not taught how to talk to them in civics class, and realize the personal relationships that were there, and how that was needed to have those types of direct conversations. And that really stood out to me. And so I was able to then, shortly after, after 2 years on the road, I happened to kind of broker a peace deal between Jack Herrera and Dennis Perone when they were deciding to do their initiative, which I had done Jack Herrera's initiative multiple times and it had failed. And Dennis Perone wanted to take his chance on his initiative, which was going to be simple, a medical initiative. But Jack was having none of it. And we were at in DC for a DPA meeting, which is back then, we used to only meet once a year, and it was in DC for DPA, or the Lynn Smith Center, when we would all get together. That's when anybody who was serious, who were the patients, the researchers, were really, you know, in one place at one time. And found myself in town, and found myself, and I have the picture of the photo, which is pretty fascinating to me. And it's, yeah, me sitting in between Jack Herrera and Dennis as they're arguing over the initiative. And everybody in that photo is a veteran. Jack Herrera was a veteran of Korea. Dennis Perone survived the Tet Offensive. And so I found myself as a youngster, I commanded a respect because I was also a combat veteran. And to sit there and to have that tete-to-tete, and to finally convince Jack to back down and let Dennis run his initiative. And of course, you all know that initiative. That's Proposition 215. And that changed the world. And so I happened right after that conversation. That conversation happened in Steve D'Angelo's house in DC. Okay. So Steve saw that and came to me, and he's like, who are you? What are you doing? And I was like, well, one, thank you for letting me stay at your house. Two, I'm burnt out. I've been on the road for 2 years, and I've gone all over the country talking cannabis. And he's like, well, I have a hemp company. Back then it was the American Hemp Company. It became Ecolution. And I was like, sure, what the fuck? I need a place to land and get myself together. And turns out they did the first 100% hemp denim jeans. And along the way, we did the hemp Adidas shoe. So I ended up moving to DC and learning a whole other realm of industrial hemp by importing, exporting from Eastern Europe directly from the farmers to working in the mills and all that. It was absolutely another baptism by doing it. You know what I'm saying? It was going to trade shows now and educating people on, you know, what these plants were that they were looking at and why it mattered, and educating them on all the aspects of hemp and why we use Eastern European hemp, because we didn't have to dye it and it was water redded and we had long, strong fiber. And, you know, we'd get these bizarre testimonials of, hi, we're skydivers. Our regular blue jeans disintegrate in 4 jumps out of an airplane. We're over 20 jumps in your jeans. We love your hemp jeans. And we're like, what the hell? You know, so it was fascinating to go from being a patient then to learning the industrial. And that is something I will forever, you know, appreciate, working with Barbara Filippone, who she was an absolute just genius in working with hemp, and was just very fortunate to find myself, because of my past activism, surrounded with good people trying to do good things. And after a couple years of doing that, I got burnt out of being in DC. I loved hemp, but being in DC, surrounded by 28 federal agencies and cops all the time, it eventually got to me. And I told Steve I was moving back to California. And when I moved back to California, beforehand, I decided to go visit a friend of mine, and his name was Todd McCormick. And my friend Todd McCormick had just moved back from the Netherlands. And when I went to visit him, he was living in a mansion in Bel Air, and he had over 4,000 plants growing. And I was like, hey, Todd, I want to learn how to grow pot. Will you teach me? And he's like, yeah, come on out. And so I was like, okay. And in between the time that I went back to DC, packed up all my shit, 2 days before I'm to drive across country, my secretary calls. She's like, ATN. It's like, yeah, you got a friend, right, named Todd? I was like, yeah, I do. In Bel Air, I was like, absolutely. She's like, I got bad news for you. He's on the news. He's been busted with over 4,000 plants. I was like, oh, shit.
Mm-hmm.
Drove out there, and the Shangri-La I had been a part of was absolutely destroyed. The DEA had come through, cut everything down, trashed the place. And when I got there, Todd wasn't even out of jail. So he ended up getting out of jail. We ended up getting all of his stuff out of, you know, county lockup. And it just turned out to be what was going to be a great opportunity turned out to be a pivot point in my life that collapsed pretty quickly. And I found myself working at a bong shop in LA quite quickly. Because it turns out friends of ours had the largest bong shop there on Melrose. So I ended up working there just to survive, because shortly after, Ecolution collapsed. They made some bad decisions on clothing, and for some reason the company collapsed. So I found myself in trying to figure out what to do. And then floundered in LA for a few years until in 99, I decided to get divorced. I'd gotten married originally at the High Times Cannabis Cup in 1995 in the movie Weed. You can see it. And oddly enough, I would finally see my wedding right after my divorce on the big screen. So it was one of those moments in life that, you know, what are you gonna do? It was a great time. Jack Herrera was actually at my wedding, and we all had a great time. So I mean, that those memories will live forever. However, I found myself back in the Bay Area, and I came back up north. And at this time, now all of my friends were all leaders in the cannabis movement. On top of that, they were dispensary owners, such as my protege, who came to me back in 93. His name is Jeff Jones. Jeff Jones would start the OCBC, Oakland Cannabis Buyers Club. And then my mentor, Debbie Goldsberry, then started Berkeley Patients Group.
We know Debbie.
You know, so I due to my friends and, again, my years of activism, and because of the trust I had built as an activist, my friends immediately took me in and mostly behind the scenes because I had learned how to grow. So they were like, we need you in the grow room. So I found myself working for a gentleman by the name of Richard Lee. And I would actually go through and take apart it was an abandoned Ethiopian restaurant for a year and a half. And the first job when I got to Oakland, he's like, it's cash. I hate to do it to you, but I got to clean out this entire place. And I did. And then I set up a grow downstairs. And then he opened up upstairs as what you know as the Bulldog. So I found myself quite quickly, intimately involved in the cannabis scene and behind the scenes because I was one of the few people who could be trusted, because when you start dealing in cannabis, as you know, people start thinking you're Daddy Warbucks and you're all of a sudden rich. And so people get ripped off. And so all of my friends had gotten, pretty untrustworthy, the people around them. So when I came back, I immediately slipped right into there. I would work with Jeff Jones and his grow and Richard Lee and his grow. And then Ed Rosenthal was like, I like what you're doing. I want you to work for me. And so if you're familiar, Ed Rosenthal does grow books. He helped publish the first grow book, him and Mel Frank, back in the early 70s. So I found myself as the general manager for Ed Rosenthal and literally providing clones for the Bay Area prior to working at the dispensaries where we were pumping out, 5,000 clones a week to the dispensary. So I was selling Dennis Perone his clones, and we were providing high grade cannabis medicine because we knew that we needed high grade cannabis medicine to come back to us. So it's all started with genetics. So I learned quite quickly about, maintaining my mother room, to get those, 5,000 clones out a week. I needed about 7,500 because, they're not magic widget machines. You can't stamp out beautiful white roots growing through the bottom of your, what your grow medium is, if you're growing Groden or if you're growing, other methods. So I learned and had quite a baptism by guerrilla grows in the Bay Area because majority of Oakland, for people who aren't aware, back in the late 90s, the majority of Oakland was pretty much shut down because of the earthquake that happened back in the 80s. There was such a severe earthquake that happened that many of the buildings were deemed unsafe. However, we end up growing in many of those because all we would do is run electricity into them and take the risk. And that's how we literally overgrew Oakland from nothing to now it's the whole infrastructure of what it is today. But back then, we grew in basements, we grew in high rises, we grew in any and everywhere possible by setting up 2,000 watt 4x8 systems with 100-gallon reservoirs, and then using salt solutions to pump them up to sometimes up to 3,000 parts per million and taking down upwards of 3 pounds of light. So for us, it became about clandestine growing to grow so that we could undercut the dominant paradigm of what the cost was. Back then, it was $6,000 to $8,000 a pound. Easily. $6,000 to $8,000 a pound for a flower, a weed that grows in the fucking ground. Yeah. So we learned quickly that we could, if we're going to provide this medicine, we had to grow it and provide it. Otherwise, people were going to rip us off or overcharge us for it. And so fortunately, people like Debbie worked with, smart people like Jim McClellan, who was the original founder as well of BPG. And Jim McClellan came from Jeff Jones, and he was his accountant. And he realized quite quickly that there was a lot of money to be made from growing pot. But also, if you could grow your own, you could undercut the market and then force the market into your price range. Not an easy thing to do, but we did it. We literally strong-arm people by coming in and saying, okay, this is your weed, very nice weed, beautiful. However, you want this price for it. It's only this price. Is giving them a kind of comparison between apples and oranges and showing them that my oranges are better than your oranges for the price range. And so we would cap it off at $3,200 a pound. And then over time, that became the range and area where we're able to, buy and sell cannabis. So shortly after working with Ed, I got burned out of working with Ed because Ed's kind of an ego, and I can handle egos for a certain amount of time. And my friend Debbie Goldsberry is like, hey, my BPG, we have a grow. We want you to come and run the grow for us. And so this was in about 2001. So I was like, okay. 25 years ago, hard to believe. And I was like, sure. But when I got to the grow, I realized that they were growing in a bad area. And so I basically had to shut down that grow. And then I came into BPG, and then I became the buyer of the cannabis. So Berkeley Patients Group was the second generation of the dispensaries. The first generation was Dennis Perone, Jeff Jones, and then they got shut down with a federal injunction in 1997, for those who aren't aware. And so basically the injunction from the federal government said, you guys can no longer sell pot ever fucking again. You shut down, or we kick in your doors and your heads. And so everybody shut down their doors and walked away peacefully.
Etienne, I just have a quick question for you before I forget to ask you this. I'm working on a series of some of the old timers, in particular the women, and Elvie is somebody I've been trying to track down. Now, I think she's in Oregon. If you're still in touch with her.
Yeah. I'll put you in touch with her.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I have her phone number and email. So, and
Okay.
yeah, not a problem.
Yeah, just shoot her.
She's visiting and staying with Paul Stanford because he just posted. So she's with him right now. Sorry, Ellie, okay. I love you, but that's where you are. Love you.
I smoked some of Elvie's weed. It's terrible.
Oh,
that weed is really terrible. I've smoked it. It's
and we wouldn't let her smoke it around us because it smelled so bad. On top of that, it still has seeds in it. So that's
terrible.
There's nothing worse than a joint.
And she couldn't wait to smoke more weed.
That joint with a seed in it. Oh,
I smoked.
Now she was like the longest person though on that program, wasn't she?
Her and Irvin Rosenfeld is still he I guess is the longest.
He's the last.
Yeah, he's the last. He's the last.
Because there were 15.
So
there were 15 that were grandfathered in, correct? Right.
22.
I think so.
It was 22 originally. 15 were originally who received it, and then it got shut down in the early 90s. Now everybody asks, well, why did it get shut down? Well, you're gonna love this because it's fucked up.
I know. No, go ahead.
Well, a senator or representative came out and basically said that that there was a whole bunch of applications that came from AIDS patients, unfortunately. And because of that, this was during the dark ages of the HIV/AIDS crisis, where there's still a lot of stigma and a lot of assholeness around it. And basically, and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically the gist was that, we have to shut this program down because the gays want to infect each other so that they actually get their marijuana.
Yeah, that's pretty sad, isn't it? Of course, that not being how, coincidentally, Cheryl's neurologist had filled out his part of what was then a streamlined process. See, when they streamlined the process, I think it was 30-some patients, and it was because there was a lot of hoops to jump through. But then it probably through the AIDS community and maybe in DC, they managed to streamline the process to where they started getting some serious interest in it, and they knew they had to shut it down right away. So what they did is they didn't close the program. They just stopped accepting single patient applications.
Right. And then everybody became grandfathered in from then on.
And now, but even that here turns out, and I'll do it quick. Coincidentally, we had a 1981 thing, Controlled Dangerous Substances Therapeutic Research Act, passed into law by a Republican in 1981, meant to help get federal legal marijuana to doctors in New Jersey who would recommend it for their patients, and then they could get actually the way you would think it should work. It was like a righteous reason for doing it, but we maintain that nobody ever asked, and that we just wanted to force New Jersey to ask for it, and we couldn't even do that. But the fact that it was finally accessible to people, it was not difficult. So they just cut it short, and I had a whole thing to go with Elizabeth Murphy Esquire and Stephen Stone of all things. I mean, it sounds like a fake name, right? And Stephen,
Right. Oh, trust me. My stepdad was Joe Smith, so I understand.
They were DEA, but I spent a lot of time trying to justify all that, and it was just an amazing thing.
Jim, I just want to say, sir, there's few people I think are living saints, and everything that you did for Cheryl, nothing but love and forever respect to you. You walked a road that all of us watched as patients and as caregivers, and it tore our hearts apart. And there's a special place for you somewhere for the road that you walked, sir. And I just want to say how what you did affected and still affects actions today that I do, because I've never forgotten the love that you showed, that you shared, that you exhibited, and the strength that you have is at a level that is, I consider, immeasurable, and my love and respect is forever.
That's beautiful.
It means a lot coming from you, especially. And the only disclaimer I ever offer is it turns out that people are motivated by different things, and I was totally motivated out of fear, total fear. Because when I found out that when a woman with MS helped Dr. Kevorkian helped her die from MS here in New Jersey, and had to read it to Cheryl, and when Cheryl saw the picture, this person was like sitting up holding a thing in chair, and Cheryl, you couldn't move shit. And when I looked her straight in the face and said, I sincerely will always be so grateful that you would never consider doing something like that. And she said, without missing a beat, looking straight at me, says, don't assume when I don't know myself. And I realized that my function to keep that fear at bay was to always have something to do. And there was no limit. But then she had no limit because she, in fact, had nothing to lose, and she knew it. And she knew that the sicker she got, the stronger she got, which was like a supernova at the end, So,
you taught us all along the way to try everything, to exhaust every avenue, to try absolutely fucking everything against your doctor's wishes and all of that.
Whatever it takes.
That is a leadership that I have had to toe myself along the way, and it gave me a deeper appreciation for you and others that have had to be forced out of your life and into activism because of the necessity of the need to do something. And you did not balk at that challenge. You accepted it with grace and led by example. And that's fucking special.
Again, you saying that counts like with so much extra credit, I think that goes without saying. And, but I would also want you to know that with me finding new ways and different ways to do stuff, that I resented that so much when the FDA finally approved a study that was going to use 50 returning veterans with post-traumatic stress that other methods had failed, And it was finally an FDA approved test. And of course, there was going to be no material coming because it would jeopardize the supply for more legitimate studies. But there were veterans all over the country that could write their congressman, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me, knowing that they could get that letter. So what I did is I became Mailman Jim, and they sent me their letters. And they started out the same fucking way with each one. It was like, I would like someone from your office to have somebody on staff talk with Jim Miller when he hand delivers this to your office. So they'd say, I'm medical man. Are you from our constituent? And I go, hell no. I'm not even from the same side of the Mississippi, but let me whip this out. Nod the Blazing Saddles, and it would be the letter. And I would read the first paragraph and mine, that's me. I'd give it to the person and I would say, listen, if you can't do this, make it quick because I got a lot of ground to cover and I can't waste time here. I ran the show with that because it was veterans. They had to. I was their exclamation point. And I was so proud to be able to do that. It was like really cool. I had to take help down with me. And then I like broke my both feet really bad and became a disabled patient myself for a while, whose bathroom was in the living room because a commode was it for months and all that sort of shit. But showed me how the other half was living and reaffirmed that I was doing the right thing. And I guess for me, it's that I suffer from being all too well aware that there are other people that are going through this, like as we speak, and I know how they feel, and it like really, it gets to me, So, but likely though, I got a good punching bag rising up here in New Jersey. Guy named Ratari or Scutari, and so I'm going to work out a lot of this shit on him. He's actually helping motivate me because between you, me, and everybody, this is, I think, the last thing, getting a bill to a hearing of all things, that I can seriously have an effect on moving it, and it will move quicker than it will without me. But after that, I expect the process to just start running on its own. You
can't expect that. We did that for a while in California, and we let it get away from us. And unfortunately, we let this kid grow up and turned out to be an asshole. So all I'm saying is keep an eye on the kid. Turn out to be an asshole. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I want to be the one that shows up, but I'm keeping an eye on some kids that are older than me right now.
But thank you for leading by example, because as much as people felt it was, and in those times you feel sometimes like you're yelling into the pillow, we saw, we heard, and we carry your torch alongside us. And of course, now my work is, at the international level. I work, of course, at the national level. I've worked behind the scenes with Michael Crowitz. We worked together in an organization we created 6 years ago called the Veterans Action Council.
No, Mike is a very good friend. He was when Cheryl and I got arrested in California, Congressman Jim Rogan's office. We did so because as a representative in California, he supported Prop 215. Y'all sent him to Washington, where he turned around and said yes to a resolution that says marijuana is a addictive and dangerous drug, and no state should recognize it as medicine, whatever. So anyway, he was, he was the point, and that's where I met Mike, and I was like so very impressed, And I mean, we've done other things together, and Kathy met Mike. We went to a thing in Baltimore one time, and Mike was involved. And then of course, with all the work he does with the treaties and United Nations stuff and all that, he's like he's my go-to source if I have any kind of questions
Yeah.
on it, But he
taught me. I'm working alongside him at the UN now, and we are working towards. We've gone above our own country. In fact, the whole reason rescheduling is happening is due to our work and the work that Michael Krawitz has done. And why does that matter? Well, here's a little history lesson. Back in the day, our friends along the way wanted to change cannabis, get it out of Schedule 1, right? Because Jim and I were both, I'm a patient. Jim was dealing with a patient who was, needed that medicine and needed access to that medicine. And it is not an accessible or easy to access medicine, right? So one of the things we would do is forced into creating the change that we wanted to see. And what happened is giving our friend John Getman an example. Our friend John Getman, who used to be the head of Normal, hated that he wasn't able to really affect change. So he decided to sue the DEA over just rescheduling, along with others over the years. And after 20 years of going through this entire battle, in the end, the DEA said, "Oh, sorry, can't do anything about it. Treaty, international treaty." Well, thankfully, my mentor Michael and others said, "Whoa, that's very interesting." And then they went at the treaty. And then in 2018, they got the World Health Organization to go, "We're down with cannabis. Let's get it out of Schedule 4, which is Schedule 1 in the United States, which is the most dangerous drug category." And so in 2020, in December of 2020, following the WHO, the United Nations decided to legalize medical cannabis worldwide, removed it from the most dangerous drug category. Therefore, medical cannabis is and has been legal worldwide since December of 2020, ladies and gentlemen. So, in 2022, Michael and I reached out to then the Attorney General of the United States because we were like, hey, currently there's 38 states plus, the District of Columbia and all the other territories basically all have medical cannabis. So it should be the law of the land, actually, by law of the UN, if you're saying that the treaty is the de facto deciding factor here. So we wrote to the Attorney General. And then we were given a direct meeting with the lead counsel of the ONDCP. And so me and Michael talked to this guy, and we basically kind of read him the riot act, saying, hey, y'all used to beat us over the head with this treaty. You need to be aware that you're now out of compliance of this treaty. And he did not like that. He immediately agreed. Not like the fact that he now realized he was now on the wrong side of that history. And 2 weeks later, that's when Joe Biden came out with his speech. And in his speech, he used two of our talking points that we actually used with the lead counsel of the ONDCP, oddly enough. So Michael Krawitz and our friends helped spawn what is happening right now, because all we're doing is coming back into compliance with the treaty. And as a treaty expert now, and I've been at the UN for the past 3 years, and I've been doing side events at the UN for the past 5 years. Side events are actually United Nations function side events, where they give you a place and a room at the UN, and you actually give a presentation. And we've been giving presentations on cannabis for the past 5 years. We are counteracting Kevin Sabet and Project Sam and the lies and misinformation, because Kevin Sabet's been at the UN spreading his lies and myth information, and countries like China, Russia, Singapore are using those to execute people. And so we're trying to change the international law. And so we are currently working with an organization called the Cannabis Embassy. And I am an ambassador of the Cannabis Embassy. We represent countries all over the world as we're working together to change the treaty. And we're looking at that potentially happening in 2030. There will be a reevaluation of the ongoing treaty. And of course, there's been some lots of revolts of people around the world have gotten tired of America's war on drugs, and we're working with those world leaders and diplomats to bring about making adult use cannabis legal worldwide by 2030. And in doing so, it will then stop executions of cannabis around the world. So we don't have that in the United States, even though back there is law. One of the whole hemp bills, if you grew 60,000 plants, you would potentially, that was executionable. And of course, that's just one field of hemp. By the way, if you're growing 300 plants per square meter, that's what that would turn out to be quite quickly. So there's still a lot of things that have to be done. Our country's not perfect. So at the same time, Michael Krawitz and I are working behind the scenes with the VA to change things further. We're in the midst of a 11 article drop on a Freedom of Information Act request we did last year, investigating what I talked about earlier, which is Directive 1315. I have since Michael has created Directive 1315, I was able to finally go back to the VA, and after 32 years, I finally got my benefits. I finally, in 2023, got them. So I literally had to change the entire system before I could get mine, but I got mine by changing the entire system. So we're going to change the system again. And so in this series of FOIA requests, we tried to see if the VA is educating their doctors and nurses on cannabis so that, they aren't kicking, veterans out for using medical cannabis. And they are educating them. But then we found all kinds of other things when we looked under the hood. We saw that were messed up. So we're in the midst of writing and publishing. 2 of the 11 articles is already out, and they're on cannabis access in the VA. And the next one, it will be on dental forms and the VA and getting flagged for cannabis. And then we're going to get into the cannabis use disorder, which is going to be 4 articles, because that's what it's going to take to explain to people what this whole thing is. So for me, I have spent the last 6 years working, kind of being the Robin to Batman. If Michael Krawitz is Batman, I'm very happy to be his Robin and work alongside him to learn from him, because he and I have been working kind of within 1 degree of separation for decades, and then we were finally able to hook up in this creation, in the sense that we're not a 501c. We're not just another veterans organization asking for money. We have no hierarchy. We have no leadership. We have no headquarters. So we exist as veterans coming together and debating things together, and we vote by consensus. So we're a working group. So it's unique in that sense that we're mostly disabled veterans who sit around and use our Rolodexes to advance the world regarding cannabis. So, I'm very fortunate that we have our networks and the creativities to bring about the change that we want to see. And so for us as veterans, we have, PTSD from our experience, but PTSD is not exclusive to veterans. Many people have PTSD. So for us, working for the greater good and working for others helps our PTSD, because we're outside of ourselves, helping others, and we've changed the history already. And you'll find, as Jim has found, changing history can be quite addictive, and it's a lot of fun. And we make it fun and addictive along the way. That's you got to make the best of a bad situation, right?
Stepping out of your comfort zone happens often, and you never know when it's going to happen in the lives that we lead.
But you were forced out of it by being a regular human, whereas we were forced into it by going into combat and other situations where we put ourselves in, but both similar situations that PTSD came from it. And we found our helping ourselves in service, helping others, because we don't realize There's a beautiful saying by the Dalai Lama. It says something along the lines of, live your life right early so later you can enjoy it a second time.
I like that. I've never heard that. That's
And
beautiful.
so
That's great.
that saying sticks in my soul because I remember the work that I did 30 years ago on the road and what I did and where it has taken me. And I would have never guessed it's taken me where it's taken me. It's one of those things where you have no idea where life takes you. And I was very fortunate to be surrounded by, the Debbie Goldsberries, Dennis Perones, the Jack Herrers, who were great guides who pointed me along the way and really gave me an opportunity to find where my strengths lay, and along the way was able to parlay that with others into positive change that is undeniable, that I can't stop. My wife's like, "You're going to do this till you're dead." I'm like, "Probably." People forget that we didn't lose all of our rights all at once. We're not going to get them all back.
Well, you said when you said talking about plans for 2030. I muted it real quick and said to Kathy, 2030, long range. We don't do that a lot.
Well, no, but see, our friends Michael and them saw that in 2008.
Yeah.
That if they didn't start that change now, and that's what happens is today's the start of a long road. Yeah. And people sometimes find that out when, oh, congratulations, you just found out you got stage 4, whatever. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of a different thing, but a similar situation where you've been forced out of your comfort zone. Now it's easier to do things that people find hard because you've already stepped out of your comfort zone. And then when you found out your voice was powerful. Jim, you showed us that actions are actionable, that power and that truth to power can affect change, not necessarily the change you wanted in the time frame that you wanted it in. However, you taught us the humility of taking that road. And he saw that, and our others saw that back in the aughts. And that 2008, finally seeing that, it took 12 years to finally arrive at medical marijuana legal. So, yeah, we've been spending the past 10 years working, and we're working toward that 10-year goal of 2030. And if it's not then, 2031. If not then, 2032.
Yeah.
Because it's collapsing, and the coalition that we're building internationally is there. We're arriving there. We're arriving there together. And these countries are pushing forward, and the United States is no longer the leader. We're just trying to guide and be guided along the way and work with our international partners, because the activism that we're doing at the international level is equivalent to those early days of activism. I feel that same kinergy, that energy of working with people who are all doing things in their own countries, like Myrtle Clark and them in South Africa. They're the ones that have our passes when we get to the United Nations. They're under the Fields of Green for All because our friends at Fields of Green for All registered as a non-governmental organization, and that takes years to do. But now we're doing that. We just applied this year, the Veterans Action Council, to be an actual NGO at the United Nations so that we can sponsor our own events. This year, our side event on CBD was by the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies and LEAP and Stop the Drug War. So there's organizations that are there, that are putting in the time and the energy. Why? Because there's change happening in the United States, but it's so conglomerated with, other interests that we've decided our best bet was to go above the United States, make the change internationally. And look how many countries are dealing. Portugal, I think, is the #1 exporter of cannabis now. All these other international markets, Uruguay, Israel, Germany is now opened up. Michael Krawitz and I helped Ukraine. You just saw the other day that Ukraine was distributing cannabis. We were directly involved in that by the interactions that we had at the UN. This is why I say, get off your asses, people, do something about it. because you never know what can happen. And just by being at the UN a couple of years, we wear our VAC hats, which are these funny looking garrison caps. So the people at the UN are smart, so they go look it up, and when they see, oh, we're cannabis experts, so what do? They came over to us and asked us for help on legislation and things like that. That all we did was provide them with copies of things that exist, and then they took it, made that change in their country, and just last week, they distributed medical cannabis to veterans and to MS patients finally in Ukraine during the war. And so that's the kind of positivity and change that you can have just by being in the right place where people are looking for you and have the right cues for people to find you.
Yeah, and you're talking about doing things that are never going to give you any instant gratification, which is a prime motivator in a lot of people's efforts, and also at people that you got to bring some of them along. I mean, they're not going to want to be in it for the
I have a
long
great
haul.
instance of that, Jim, as that's called planting the tree that you will never sit under. Inadvertently, right? Inadvertently, our friend Ed Rosenthal got busted. Our friend Ed Rosenthal got busted, and our friends were together. Debbie and others were in an elevator going up to his arraignment. And they're like, God damn it, we're sick of doing this. There's no organization that actually represents patients. And so what did we do? We started an organization called Americans for Safe Access. Okay. So Americans for Safe Access started, and then of course we supported it. We basically financed it for years at Berkeley Patients Group because we had to act as not-for-profits. So we put our money where our mouth is. So we paid their salaries, their rent, their bills, all that for years. And along the way, that organization would find somebody by the name of Dana Rohrabacher that would then create a law that would protect medical states. Okay. And that medical states law then became part of the rider that is the medical cannabis protection. Well, yours truly in 2012 was forcefully evicted by the United States government. And we had to move BPG because we were within 1,000 feet of a school.
Yeah.
And that school had no issue with this, but the United States attorney decided that they wanted to make examples out of us. And by doing so, if you walked it, it was over 1,000 feet. But as the crow flies, property line to property line, it was 984 feet, just within the 1,000 part limit. So when we moved, we ended up having to move, and then we stayed open. And then when we moved there, the government came after us for a daycare center, and we were like, no, a daycare center is part of the law. So it ended up being 5 years actually of fighting the United States government. But in 2016, oddly enough, on our birthday for BPG, the United States attorneys threw in the towel because they could no longer afford to send in an attorney to defend us because the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment prohibited them from spending the money to go in and prosecute me. So there you go. Inadvertently, a tree we planted, we would sit under that shade. And that's not something that's ever supposed to happen in any way, shape, or form, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so I have been very fortunate to have lived through that little karmic thing. And so that's why I work toward the longer goal of, yes, today it's going to suck, and what we're doing may not affect change. However, what we lay today will be the wall that is there of that change. So sometimes you have to take the long road. And fortunately, Michael and my mentors showed us that there is a road there. Remember, Getman and all these other brilliant people had exhausted every methodology. And our friends realized that, okay, well, if you're going to default to the treaty, we'll go change the treaty. And that is powerful. And then not only is it powerful to move that change in power forever, I mean, the examples are there. So how can I not then stand up alongside of him and try? I'd rather fail at something I love than succeed at something I hate. And my brother has shown us the way, and my brothers and sisters all around the world have shown us what is possible. So, why not us? Why not now?
Yeah,
Worst they can say is no.
yeah, and and even with any risk benefit analysis, we're talking about a lot of things that aren't really risky. It's not like you're going to get arrested or have to have a fight. It's like you have to be able to outlast them. I mean, it is, and obviously you need short range plans too. But I guess lucky for us in New Jersey, there's a lot of other little things going wrong. So while I'm busy with a long range plan and a medium plan, there's always a punching bag really nearby if I need to like really work myself out a little bit. And
Yeah.
so these things are not mutually exclusive, or they don't have to be done consecutively. So it's like doing a lot more than walking and chewing gum at the same time. It's like juggling and whistling.
But we're empowered more because now we have an endocannabinoid system. We have now. We now have the American Nursing Association with cannabis nursing as a specialty. There's now books on it. Now there's educational. There's all these steps that have happened along the way that are going to make it so much easier for us in the future, because now there is an understanding of what the endocannabinoid system is and why it matters. And now there's an understanding of it specifically with cannabis, and that only has helped us take the anecdotal and put science behind it. And Sue knows as anybody, as a nurse, that is so important to have actual science. Anecdotal is one thing, but to have science there to the point where now they can not only is it possible, there's now workbooks, teaching books, and now classes that you can take to now go there. Those are steps that have been laid because of the work that you did, Jim, and the work that I did and others along the way. We were all different parts of paving this road that we don't know where it's going. We still got to keep our eye on the horizon, but
somebody's got to open the door. Yeah, somebody definitely has to get the door open. And I think that is that's certainly your specialty. And
you kicked the door open for us. We came behind you.
Yeah, well, Cheryl and I didn't know anybody in New Jersey when we found out it worked on her in 1991. I walked across the state pushing her wheelchair to alert people with a sign, that this is so, in 1993. And we met one person that helped us make sure we got noticed on that walk, and then did not see or hear from again. And we had nobody else in New Jersey to be activists with, just till 1999. And then, then it was at the Larry Hirsch's class action lawsuit, 500 patients against the federal government, and Cheryl's one of them patients. And man, when we made it to Philadelphia, which is like right next to New Jersey, yeah, I met some people from New Jersey, actually a couple that came to meet us, figuring we'd be there, and it just started a whole different journey. But we always,
if you had the internet at that time, Jim,
oh man, we would,
because that tool has been so helpful to all of us to spread the word, as well as if you were available, you would have completely gone viral, absolutely, with what you were doing. There just was not those things. That's hard one day. It's hard to convey to the youth today because they don't understand that the internet wasn't around, and that we all found each other through clippings that we all showed each other, right? It was my friend saying, oh, hey, check out what these people have and what they have going on.
And you could go to a library and look at this thing called microfilm.
Microfiche.
To find news articles that you could then find an opening somewhere. It was like, holy crap. And now I sit here and I go, I wonder if, why would that? Oh, okay. I hit my phone and I ask it and it tells me. Holy crap, if we had that. When I walked across the state, I didn't have a phone. I was at a touch. It was weird, and it's took so long, but yet being like the gatekeeper seemed like a valid thing. It was like opening the door. Fuck, there's nobody coming in. Oh, we got to hold the door open. And, I kind of did that juggling stuff till, but it took so many other people then to sew it all together. And then you are in a whole other place on the sphere of things that we need to do, that we don't often see. And, when I found that you did know Mike, I thought, oh, this has got to be interesting. I mean, this is like...
Well, you're one of the broad shoulders that we stand upon.
It's a good thing I was scared then, because it came to some sort of use, and, and it did work. I'll tell you what, though. There's things that you would know, of course, that would happen along the way that are with you. The littlest things, like after getting arrested in Jim Rogan's office, and then we're leaving the Crown Plaza Motel, already checked out. I'm wheeling Cheryl any 8 feet away from the desk, and the woman says, "Oh, Jim, Cheryl, there's extra USA Today's. Would you like them?" Because they gave them out to everybody. You're on page 6 in the Washington section. And it was, I saw this look on Cheryl's face. I swear to God, I'm not sure I'd ever seen it before. And it was pride. It was obviously pride. It was like, yeah, holy crap. Then the exclamation point, first person outside, a woman hustling by to work. She was a businesswoman in proper businesswoman attire, and stopped dead in her tracks and saw Cheryl and went, "I saw you on TV last night. Good for you. Good for you." And it was like, again, this look of pride, And so anyway, yeah, we both bore witness to things that are still amazing looking back. That's why I like saying something, and I know, well, for sure you are going to understand it, and I hope others do too. But it's just there are so many things that can be done that people aren't really quite piling onto yet. And I'm not real good at being a traditional, I don't use air quotes, but leader. I kind of set it out there. I tee it up.
You lead by example. You don't need... That's kind of the best way to lead, because you didn't need anybody to coach you along. Your fear was your guide, and your love was your road. You were going to walk that road of love regardless because of Cheryl. And that was a teaching tool that we all saw through, however we saw what you had to endure. And we never forgot, because you were never able to arrive where you wanted to arrive. And that is tragic, and that is wrong. And that's also one of those things that drives us, is those past injustices that were never corrected. By moving things forward to a certain resolve, they're finally righted, even a little bit.
And then Lefty is one of the few people that I know that met Cheryl that I'm involved with ever. So I kind of blame her for him being a long timer too, because we both knew her together, and I've kind of taken advantage of that because we're different. We were coming. He was more of like a Howard Stern protege, and it's good. You want to get people watching, and I was more of a, you got to come a little closer to the middle, and we worked on each other. But the way we got started on this podcast that's going, the one at the State House, for like 13 years now, and we didn't set out for a 13-year run, It was like we started with a hotspot, just because we wanted to bring a gathering we were trying to have weekly anyway, but we wanted to bring it beyond there. And we didn't have a pot to piss in. Kathy had to help us out, get that hot spot. So, and it took quite a bit of convincing. And, you know, that's what's in it for me. I got to prove myself right back then, and I'm still working on it. But there is something to be said of the long run. The fact that we've been there 13 years isn't lost on the generations of state police that have come and gone while we remain, you know. And it's really weird being sort of a known fixture around that part of Trenton. And so, of course, on Friday, we're going to show up for July 10th because, of course, that's oil 710 upside down. Oil. Yeah, when you think of medical, you think of oil. And Lefty's like, hey, listen, there's already a 420. I'm not going to let them hijack that. We're going to make it National Patient Awareness Day.
We're taking it back. We're taking that day back for the sick, dying, and disabled.
You know, and the thing is, it's hard to tell exactly, you know, it's gone from having states take part and all, trying to almost promote that, you know, with the patchwork of state laws that we have, what of course we try to promote here in New Jersey is there's other states to point to. You don't need to travel there unless you need to smell what you're talking about, you know, and that we have, for instance, 24 states that have legalization laws. Out of them, 20 of those states allow their medical cannabis patients to grow some of their own medicine. 4 states don't. New Jersey, Delaware, Illinois, Oregon.
Delaware.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, that's half our fault.
Yeah, I know.
We corrupt them. We go first. Somebody points at us, you know, or right across the bridge. So we've always kind of owed it to them. But the thing is, I'm really now getting involved in this fun puzzle of kind of pushing our Senate president, who's not allowed this bill to be posted for 4.5 years, which is a long time in patient years, you know. I mean, you got dog years, you got patient years, you got regular years. That's a long time, you know. And the fact that we are an outlier state should put the burden of proof on them to validate what are we being protected from, you know. But somehow I've got real hope, and I know it's not going to be another year like the others. I personally guarantee it. I can do that. I realized, you know, I got to resummon the old Jim Miller one more time, you know, and I'm secretly doing that, you know. It's like the Hulk taking about 1.5 years to get green or something, you know. But so I'm getting some ducks in a row, and I feel like I could have done some things earlier by now, and I thought other people would be able to. This is legislative. It shouldn't be me. This is not my specialty, but it's not getting done. And then I can't say, why isn't anybody getting it done if I'm not doing it myself, you know? And so, yeah, it's going to be different this year. And I got to tell you what, I have a hard time getting a grip on where I belong in all this. And I appreciate what you've said tonight, because I need to hear that right about now.
Just be where you need to be sometimes. You can't be everywhere, but most importantly, if you can inform the process and along the way, guide the process, you know, it's you know, people are going to ask you and look to you and as if this is okay, and be honest. Tell them where it's good and tell them where it sucks, you know, give your honest feedback. You've got enough experience, and they're asking you because you have experience, and they want to make sure that, you know, they're passing, you know, everything properly if they're doing it respectfully. So hopefully they are.
Some people do that, but ironically, I don't know. This might be not something I would imagine you might experience. There's people that are my own age that have been doing this, well, not as long as me, but a long time, and I'm still thought of as the hammer. I'm the one that opens the door. I did it with Cheryl, and then when I formed a coalition for medical marijuana with registered nurse Ken Wolski, he was the registered nurse getting credit for help ushering through the New Jersey State Nurses Association 2002 resolution uh, uh, advocating for us to do something about medical marijuana, whatever, and act expeditiously. And basically, it gave me something to point to. But what happens is, I would be the one, like I got arrested at a George Bush rally, and then registered nurse Ken Wolski explained why I was doing what I was doing. It was I would open doors.
Yeah.
You know? And
where there were no walls even sometimes.
But and I don't want to say it's lack of respect for my experience, but what I heard after doing it is, geez, Jim, you got arrested at a George Bush rally, but that's going to be a First Amendment issue, not medical marijuana. I go, are you kidding me? It's all it's going to be about in the media. I don't give a shit what it's about in court. It's going to be all, and of course it was, And then they found out that a nonprofit can't pay for somebody's $400 penalty. We went on double secret probation for 6 months. But the point is, even now down the road, I can't explain to people while having a 10-foot blow-up rat named President Rattari is a good thing, and somebody's saying, but we can't piss off Senate President Scutari this way because we need him to get things done. Understand, I'm hearing this.
It's a double-edged sword, Jim. At least you're trying, and that's the thing that people are more than happy to sit around and play, armchair quarterback and yell about the situations. But this is when I tell them to shut the fuck up, go contribute, or go join an organization and go educate themselves because they're showing their ignorance. And this is the big problem, is that most people have checked out. So this is where I've also implored them. Well, if you don't see the representation in an organization that's out there, then go create one yourself.
Yeah.
I helped create ASA. I helped create VAC. Again, if it's not there, then create it. But if it is there, then go join it, represent it, help save it. And that's, at least you're trying. And fuck everything else.
You're looking at a core group here that is really kind of in a way that, see, Lefty and me, we've gravitated to understand each other and really morphed into a stronger power than either one of us might be by ourselves. But then Sue is the one that is not a bobbing head doll. She really tells you where it is, and that kind of keeps the boys in line, and it's
building teams is important.
It's kind of there, like waiting, and something is gonna happen this year. But it's like that Green Day song, time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. It's not a lesson, but not a question, but a lesson learned in time. That applies to that. You can't schedule. I can't schedule what it is I know I need to do. I have to schedule it and ride it in like surfing. You got to ask Dan Backer about that. He'll tell you all about it. I had the pleasure of having some fun time with him. And I believe he was at Cheryl's Memorial as well in Washington. But anyway, it's part of me is excited about it, and oddly enough, it could end up being something so simple that it's not a big deal. But we can't negotiate with somebody that, when you have no teeth, no power, nothing to negotiate with. And he's a Senate president who has favors all in, and a power plan that everybody understands, and you want to be in his draft, not against his headwind, So sort of like what's going on nationally is really, in a way, a little microcosm here with a Senate president who everybody understands him. You don't have to say it out loud. Wink, nose, can't tell you why, and we're close enough to crack that code that I think I can give us a power of negotiation. And, basically it involves what I call Billy Jacking somebody, telling them exactly what you're going to do is not a damn thing you can do about it. And make sure it's understood. And there's a way to do something like that. And then say the way to avoid this is to come clean on a Zoom meeting, and that I negotiate myself out, bad cop, for somebody else who can come in and kick his ass. That's what I've been doing for a long time. I'm ready to do it again, open a door like that. And but I wouldn't be able to do it without the help we're looking on right here. And Johnny Stash is a secret weapon, because when Lefty and I were at the State House podcast just last week, or Thursday, we were obviously there for home grow for patients, and obviously Senate President Rattari is a bad guy, but he's a 10-foot cute rat holding a nice sarcastic sign. You shouldn't have trusted me, or whatever, But then there's also people doing business there, and even though it was not real crowded that day, there's a real nice lunch truck that came by like for a morning break for breaks. So the police and anybody that's anywhere near that front entrance knows to come out in that little hour and a half time. So it was amazing when a song came on, and our podcast it's not blasting, but you can hear it. And this song comes on about honk for homegrown, and I thought, what the hell? I recognize this is going to be Johnny Stash using Suno to make a song, but what a coincidence. It was just before that when Lefty said, look in his podcast, Jim, you forgot to bring the honk for homegrowers. We're in a little canyon there, and people honk, and we miss it. And I'm like insulted. Come on, I'm better than that. I got it. So I went over, and he's like, you're setting it up. I can hear him. He's setting it up, facing both ways. There's a horn. There we go, And then I come back from that. Now we're talking, and what was it, Leslie? 15 minutes later? I can't remember. It was too weird. It just, all of a sudden, this reggae song, Honk for Homegrow, comes on. And it's really wonderful, And it was, I loved it. It was like a soundtrack, and I was now in a movie scene. And I'm loving it, because like there's no verbiage for me. All I have to do is look at me, do what I do best. I move around, I got to learn not to do that. Sometimes I sit on my hands like this. But anyway, what I noticed was somebody had just gotten their whatever to eat, and they kind of this eyebrow up thing, and they're looking over. They know what we're there for, and we're just smiling and listening to a song called Honk for Homegrow. And people are honking, and there's a honk for homegrow. So I just put where they can see exactly what I did. And so they see the honk for homegrow sign. They hear it's just been placed up. And now a song comes on, honk for homegrow. Johnny, you made us look really good. it was a good song. It was like relevant. It was like people were kind of looking around, almost like, is there something going on? We were like magicians to them for that little bit,
I'm going to play it, but you have to mute yourself.
Anyway, so that, you can't get that honor, can you? You can't get that honor, can you?
Right.
Okay, this is, I think, where you came in. Earlier. Where Lefty was frozen, I was echoing, and we all had to mute ourselves. And we're not going to do it again. I'm looking at you.
Little green rooted, hands in the dirt, work before the church, honk for hunger, honk for patient first. We keep it simple, let the good things work. Honk for hunger, honk for hunger, honk for patient first. They always come first. Honk for hunger. For hunger, sativa cross will preach, then the whole block will see. The bills in Senator Nick's drawer, quiet at Nick's office door. No rush, no show, just slow and no homegrown. Hunk for homegrown, hunk for patient first. From seed to shelter, that's what we are after. Hunk for homegrown, hunk for homegrown, hunk for patient first. They always come first. Hunk for homegrown, hunk for homegrown. Sativa cross will preach, then the whole block will say. Let the small seeds grow. That's the way it goes.
That's
Yeah,
that's good stuff
that
right
got
there.
people raising eyebrows, who were getting their food run there. Yeah. So we'll show up on the on Friday. It'll be actually decent Friday for 7:10.
Yeah, next Friday.
Yeah, there's gonna be no.
That could be our official meeting too.
Yeah. Well, I know one thing though. It's like Patient Awareness Day. It's going to be more of a they're out of town pot party, pretty much. When we're right by the sidewalk, we're cognizant of making sure that there's nobody on a school trip walking by, so they can see what we're there about, but they won't see the consumption and that sort of thing. But also consider that when they walk by and they're like maybe 7th grade or something, and they're looking by and they see exactly what we're there about, I would imagine if I were their escort, I'd be kind of worrying, do I jump into action to what's this thing about? So
right now I am into organizing young people, just because of the events happening in this country. We can't grab them the same way people could grab. We innately knew what to do.
What do you mean by young people, though? Like, what years are you generalizing that?
A lot younger than us.
Oh yeah, like that's
a lot younger.
60 years old to me. Come on.
Yeah, I'm 57 this year, so we gotta figure out.
Yeah.
Gen Z, Gen Alpha,
But
So you know what? But they've lived through different times than us, So they're scared. They're still.
Oh, yeah, they've lived through a pandemic in their youth. You want to talk about, we never had to deal with that.
They also lived through 9/11. 9/11 is big here.
Find me or yourself or somebody who is here who understands everything that I don't understand about how to get this to other people. There's people that are like, let's just say 18 years old, so it makes them 18 and above, that could be an intern that could be, what are you doing that for, Jim? Do this or I'll get that, and I could learn what I need to do about what I need to do. But if I were that somebody and could see maybe somebody like me had the keys to it all, but didn't know what the fuck to do with them, and he did as a newcomer, there have been people that were proud to give a Student for Sensible Drug Policy. When I took Cheryl to the Northeast Regional Conference in Rhode Island, where we were stayed there with Ann McCormick, Todd's mom, that they really saw.
Rest in peace, Ann. She was great.
Oh yeah, man! I tell you, yeah, I got to.
But all of this is it's union organizing 101. This is what this is.
Well, this is,
And I know I continue to beat this into your heads. You know, I keep telling you that, but it is.
We need like to a chore, a goal
Okay.
to put this to work. You know, a specific.
Yes. So next Friday we'll have our real meeting about that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. In effect, we will. But there's other podcasts coming, and we culminate it with the big Thanksgiving pop-up giveaway that, in my opinion, could be really awesome with more people involved, because that's freaking spectacular. What we do, Etienne, is we go there as Cannabis Consumers Care, and we get like really quality, nice warm coats and clothes and things, and we get money. Kathy goes out and buys 40 things of like toothpaste, toothbrushes, what else? Shampoo, feminine hygiene product, you know, that people can take away. And we set out stuff on tables, and people, we have to have a sign that says, really, free stuff. Take what you need, but leave the rest. You know, and like this last year, we didn't make it anything. It was Cannabis Consumers Care. It wasn't angling for anything, you know. Oh, and this time it was welcoming Governor Cheryl-elect to Washington with a sign that said, "Cannabis consumers need your help," but more about that coming up later. It's
News
see,
at 11.
There are things moving in considering that, because we went through 8 years of Chris Christie, and we put him through cones at the podcast. I don't know if you know about the association.
Oh yeah, and rightfully so.
Oh, we put him through the cones, and but he never went in the side door. He'd come through the cones where we directed him through what a sign said, "Foot traffic study, we think," and a picture of me and Bill Baroni and him all together, who was the guy that went to prison for doing the cones. You know, Kathy started the cones too. She had 4 6-inchers, and, you know, or 9-inchers, and then they grew into bigger.
I always come up with teacher ideas.
And things. And what I really liked a lot is the state police watched this happen. It was week to week then. We were there like every Thursday, so which week can be annoying to anybody, I bet. So what happened is it went from that to 4, and then to 4 on each side, and then people started donating money for cones because they wanted to see, because we wanted to come out and all the way and join with the rest of the sidewalk, and I was going to take about 40 19-inch cones, you know. So a state trooper came out and said to me, he's watching this line of cones, and he goes, "How long are the cones going to get?" And I said, "It grew up to be about 24 inches eventually." I didn't know what the fuck he was talking about, you know. But anyway, what happened is he walked over to where I was through this long line, and he started telling me about that being in the way of or whatever. And I stopped him. I said, "Listen, if you want to make that argument, don't walk right through him. Walk around him to tell me that." And he realized he became my answer that no, it's not going to block anybody from running into anything. You don't walk through them to tell me it might block some. I've never been impressed by their logic, but I think they get impressed by ours, and it's like really weird to have a really good rapport with the state police, to the point that we allowed a group to have a large protest. We'll have red shirts. Lefty could say what it was from, he'll remember. And they were up by the fountain in the annex, and we were up by the road anyway, you know, but we were smoking pot, and somebody had an issue with that, one of the organizers, and they might have had 100 people there, and we had a dozen. And yes, we were smoking copious pot. So we turned around and watched this person run up, and the body language and the police, and this person had all this kind of motion, and the guy went like that, pointed over there, went that, and just turned away and walked, you know. And it was good because that person kind of looked over, and of course I'm there going like that. That's right, you know, we own the police. Yeah. Well, the thing is, we've never disputed, we've never argued, when it's like, no, you can't put up signs on the railing into the State House anymore. It's okay.
Yeah, they chip at you in any way that you can, but that's why you have to keep fighting, because you're fighting for others, but also for the rights that people don't realize that are getting eroded through your direct activism, which is
We're
important
steady,
work.
we're a presence, and it's not tough work though, really, because all we do is talk. The setup is disciplined to get it set up, and I try to get out there. I'm closer than Lefty, and I can get out there to get a good parking space and try to park just far enough away from another car, annoyingly enough for anybody else can't park in it quite. And then, however, somebody backs up to me, especially from there, whoa, 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 not so close. So when Lefty comes, I can drive up, and he has a parking space. It's all like a teamwork. But we get pretty high, I got to say. Without even really meaning to sometimes. And then people stop by and they join us on the podcast. We enjoy that. And, not so much for the camera, but while we're there, we're prepared if somebody really doesn't have a bud and don't have much to give, but a bud. It's nice to even kind of have that reputation. It's weird to be a part of a fixture in Trenton for this long. Oh, Lefty, the ramp. He had a ramp that was stolen or disappeared. A small little ramp to get over a curb for wheelchair, because we're on the other side of a curb when we do this on the lawn. And I forget how it became a police thing, and it was all of a sudden back there like it was returned. But it was returned to a bottom step of about 6 steps going up a ramp, not by a curb. It was weird. So did you ever find out about that, Lefty? Just a sidebar? No?
No, we have court in August to find out the guy.
I think whoever did it just put it back. It's a jinx. It's getting into fucking court and whatever. I think it was just somebody just put it back there. Not the police. Police don't know how it got there. Anyway, it's Trent.
My last question is, what is your favorite munchie food?
Everybody gets the question.
Munchy food. Well, it depends. It depends on the mood.
Yep.
I when I was younger, I used to eat late at night, but now I don't eat anything past 10 o'clock. So snacky foods. That's so hard. I've got like cherries, and I've got fruit sitting next to me, almonds.
You don't seem excited about it, though. You don't seem excited about it, though.
No, I just, as I'm gonna road trip here soon, and I know when I road trip, I like to eat bugles.
Oh yeah,
Bugles, nice.
Okay.
Put them on your fingertips like you got fingernails, and I like that. Sometimes the plain, they've got a caramel one that is really a fucking good stoner food, but I'm, like I said, I'm a 57-year-old guy, so I don't eat like I used to. So snacks are a different thing nowadays. I like to snack on little chocolate, but there's these like little, from Trader Joe's, these little Snickers, little half quarter bites, and those are probably my little favorite, because I lived on Snickers in college for some reason, and so it's always a familiar flavor to me of the mixture of caramel, chocolate, and peanuts, and yum yum yum.
And what else? You got another question? Yeah.
Come on.
Come on.
Oh, the first time you got stoned, how old were you, and what was the story behind that?
There it is.
Okay, first time I really got stoned, I was 19. I was working at La Casa Mexican restaurant as the dishwasher. And I remember the guy who came in, who was from the tire shop behind us. And he rolls in and he pops out. In the center of his palm is a little green bud. And at that time, I had only smoked Mexican. I'd never smoked kind bud before. So he comes in, and I want to say, this is like 2 in the afternoon. It was an afternoon weekend shift or something like that. So it was, nobody wants to be where they are, right? So he's like, oh, we're going to get high off this. And I look at him like, yeah, right. And so he puts it in the bowl. He does the explanation of the lighter. He's like, okay, you just got to light it from a small end. You can't light the whole thing. I'm like, okay, right. So I do it, right? I set the bowl out and I corner it out and I hit it. And as I hit it, it just expands in my lungs. I remember handing the lighter and the pipe to the guy, and I immediately turned on the side because it was on this kind of a half couch thing. And I immediately laid back, and I remember looking up at the ceiling, and all that went through my head is, oh, this is marijuana. I've been smoking whatever the fuck I was smoking, and then I remember afterwards asking him, I was like, dude, how much is that pot? And he's like, oh, this stuff back then, this is 1989, 90. And he's like, yeah, that's $50 an eighth. And I was like, fuck that madness. I can, back then I was doing $15 eighths of Mexi, right? So I was doing the math in my head and I was like, I will never spend $50. I remember stupidly saying that, and I remember hearing it out of my own mouth. And as I was saying it, I was saying, I have a feeling I'm going to regret saying this out loud. I'm never going to spend $50 for an eighth. Right.
You could have been shaking your head like that when you said it. Yes, I am. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really Morgantown, West Virginia was the first time I really officially got high, and it clicked. It was like, oh, okay. Wow. This works for me. And why does it work for me? Well, I was, back then I was an alcoholic because I was going through college and being in the military. And right after the war, I was heavily into alcohol. I would drink up to a fifth of Jack Daniels a night and start into a second bottle.
Whoa.
Very unhealthy levels of drinking. And it was one of those experiences where I had another friend of mine who was a much more successful drunk than I was, that he was that guy that went to the party that pissed on the couch.
Oh.
And
Oh.
nobody wants to be that guy, because that guy can no longer sit down at the parties, right? And so I realized I was kind of couch surfing and passing out at people's houses. And I was just one piss stream away from being that guy.
Being that guy, yeah.
Right? But the stigma of that guy, by going around parties and watching him have to forcefully stand and then leave embarrassed, was like, oh, that's some fucking shunning of a level that I don't think I want to experience.
No.
And that was strong enough for me to realize that
no, you'd be that guy.
I more into pot, but it was also I was working on a horse farm, and that was probably the most effective thing for me after the war, was to come around, because I didn't care about humans again. There's an unfortunate thing that happens when you exterminate humans, that it becomes hard to care about them again or to come back to society, etc. So I struggled with that, and the military did not have any assistance in taking you on that guideline. It's one of those things that all veterans experience and have to deal with. And I will put it to you in two perspectives. When I left for war, everybody said to me, I love you, come back in one piece. When I came back from war, the first thing 95% of people asked me, so did you kill anybody?
Really?
Really. And they don't prepare you how to handle that. How do you answer that? Yeah,
No
you can
training
answer.
for that.
There was nothing for that. And what does that do? That brings up, for me, it became very traumatic because, you see the faces of the people that you kill. You never forget them. They live in and they haunt you forever. Okay. It's not a wonderful and beautiful thing. It's also why I work and do what I do, is because I feel
You muted yourself.
I did meet myself. Sorry.
Nice.
So for myself, it was dealing with the shame of having to confront what I did in combat every time I stepped out of the house and talked to people and saw friends that I hadn't seen. That, again, the last thing they said was come back in one piece. And nobody seemed to get that irony except for us soldiers. And that, for me, that's what drove me away, and why spending that summer working on that horse farm in rural Pennsylvania probably saved my life. Because there's something, honestly, about going out, getting up with the sun, going to bed when the sun goes down, working your fucking ass off all goddamn day for something else, and then rinse, lather, and repeating in those times of trauma. For me, it really helped humiliate myself as well as humble myself and figure out how to exist again in society when there was shame for murdering men, women, and children over oil. Those are
Yeah,
things.
that's a very good therapeutic module being used now. There's a lot to be said about
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, between art therapy, growth therapy,
Mhm.
animal therapy. I'm a big proponent of all those. And one of the things when the VAC we're big proponents of is definitely growth therapy, because when you're going through something very hard or something life-changing or life-threatening, there's nothing better for the soul than to create, sustain, and build something beautiful through nature. It is a rewarding experience that has, we don't know how many suicides they've held off. You know what I'm saying? Because uh, that's a reality that we face. And not only that, it's a big reality for our first responders. But who's right behind first responders? Researchers. Yeah. I actually work and have an active group for some of the top cannabis researchers because of the hard work that it takes, as well as the high suicide rates, unfortunately, among researchers, because of the pressures that come with it, as well as the loss of areas for jobs. So it's just another area of cross awareness through our understanding of course, there's the coined phrase of 22 suicides a day for, military veterans, which
Yeah.
there's more or less on any given day. And that's, unfortunately, we have lost more veterans coming home than we ever lost in combat. And that's because of what we've asked these men and women to do as children, and the horror and karmic debt that comes with that. I was able to experience that at a young age, and it's horrible. No human should do it. There is no greater teacher to peace than experiencing war. Sometimes
It's interesting that you said that research is right behind that. I was a burn ICU nurse for many years, and I also worked trauma in inner city settings. So they had done a research study on nurses, the nurses in Vietnam when they came back, and us as a group, and we were neck and neck. it was equivalent, you know. So
Yeah, people don't
yeah,
realize
they
the
no, they
horrors you go through daily. I mean,
don't.
just being a nurse, I got nothing and will forever have nothing but mad respect for nurses. I was just a
Thank you.
minor combat medic and all, I nothing, what you experience all the time, people don't realize is how quickly y'all assume and accept the responsibility of your PTSD. You learn how to live with it and how to survive
Mhm.
alongside of it, but it's something that we need to talk about more and to confront more, so it doesn't become buried, so it doesn't become that sack of sand that becomes such a heavy weight that you can't carry it anymore. There's too many of us that are out there, and that's the great thing about cannabis. It helps shine through that light and helps give people hope when sometimes they're hopeless. It's helped me in times when I would have absolutely have necessarily gone the distance. Um, and we all have to deal with our own mortality our own way, and that's one of the things we've had to deal with. I mean, I've been providing medicine for 27 years. I've been dealing with people dying for 27 years, and it never gets easier. Each one is special, beautiful, and horrible all in its own, itself. So we all have to figure out how to help each other walk better toward the exit.
That
And that's one thing that Jim and you and others have taught us, is to have that compassion and that humility to step outside yourself and help others along the way. And what beautiful things can happen.
Yeah, and that was kind of like at the end of the podcast, one thing that Lefty's been doing for a while now, and it's not a super long list, but it's done in the style of September 11th, when the names of those who died in the World Trade Center attack, their names are read and separated by a belt, just like so they're real, not forgotten. So it's like it's not like a hard and fast list and ways people get on it, but it's all people that died pretty much before getting to the light at the end of the tunnel.
And I think that, for those of us that have somebody on that list, we appreciate that, because often others are afraid to talk to us about it. Like, I lost a daughter, and I see what a hard time someone has when they want to ask me a question about how I felt about that, or what happened, or how did you do it afterwards, and whatnot. But those are difficult questions to ask. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
but how good did it feel to answer and be able to answer them honestly, right?
mhm. And I do like to answer those questions,
Yeah.
but they're difficult. They're hard for others to ask.
And that's understandable, because that also shows in the respect for the road that you have traveled.
Yeah.
And that road that others traveled until they could travel it no more, is like, Lefty and I have had some of the best podcasts ever, ending on such a high note. And then it comes time to read that list. I believe it's holding fast at 61 names right now. And it's the name and a bell, not much to say about it, just so the names are read out loud. It stays, I don't know. For me, it's like taking a sort of punch with the helmet on, though. You know what I mean? Ain't no knockout blows going on. But it reminds me what I don't need to be reminded of. But, it somehow all adds up. So anyway, at some point he reads that, and then he recites either one or two stanzas from the Ode to Remembrance, which was written for those killed in World War One, from United States, France, Australia, and come on, Jim, I've been getting pretty high here tonight. It's like, come on, yeah, whatever, yeah, it's the good guys. But from World War One, and there's one comment in particular I like, and the one that he reads both of them. We use that as a metaphor for the people's names that were on the list that we just read. And I love that line. They fell with their faces to the foe. Oh man! So that's something everybody that's on the list had, and just a way to remember. And it rings a bell. Then we feel like shit, and we go better about the rest of our night. So Lefty, is he? I don't know. Hey, I can go. I can hang out here forever, but I know Lefty, like, he's going into his overtime right now.
Overtime.
Well, I can't thank you all enough for having me tonight.
Oh
Yeah,
man!
Thank you.
Right back at you. It was like
It's a pleasure.
it's
Thank
really
you.
it's really as riveting and understandable as could be for anything we hear on this. And man, it was I always hope to feel something different, know something different, feel like I've been educated or opened to a new door. And yes, 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 and yes tonight. And it's actually, I mean, this is pretty much like meeting somebody, and it's good to meet you. I mean, it's kind of cooler than a conference call.
Yeah, I'd prefer it over a joint or passing you a pipe, but this is the next best thing.
And
Same
this
to
for
you too. I look forward to the time when we do actually physically share some abundance together.
well, it's one thing about all the paths that I've crossed and that you've crossed was the crossing of those paths, the time that you have to share. And it's not long, but then along came ways of staying in touch so easily, like say Facebook as an example. For me, I really don't go a lot. I should be actually, it's come to my attention, I really should be on Instagram right about now for things that I'm getting ducks in a row, and I don't know, man, I can't teach an old dog new tricks. It just seems like it's up to the person teaching the old dog to find tricks that old dog could learn. I mean, I am so deficient in such simple things. And honestly, seriously,
it doesn't take away from what you're doing, your message that you're going for.
Oh,
because
yeah.
people respond or see it. You don't necessarily have to do it. I mean, you have to understand, Jim, they hire people to have teams around people to do things. I can't keep up with that either, and I'm on the front lines. And even when I'm on the front lines, I can only just do a snapshot because I'm too busy in the shit, as we say, to sit there and gloat about what's going on. You can't rest on your laurels, right? We've got enough laurels. We could sit back and retire and enjoy what we've done, but we're not satisfied with that. We have to keep driving and making that change forward. And credit you that you're doing it in your way. So don't chastise yourself that you're not able to necessarily learn a new tool. Your tools reach the right people as is.
This coming from a man who's working on global affairs as his project, it's like okay, man, I feel like actually, I'll be honest with you. I actually feel more validated for having been through this podcast. That's the quickest definition. I'm trying to fucking nail. What is this feeling? I'm not goddamn used to it. Validation, feeling it. So thank you for that. I mean,
we don't do that enough with our mentors and people who have done something that have moved the needle. We need to appreciate those that have, as I said before, that have been hoisted out of your normal life that anybody should have. And the activism life wasn't chosen for you. You kind of had to choose it, and you accepted it with a grace and an honor that few people I have seen be able to walk that road and sustain. So, that is a gift. That's a special gift. And that's one that, others recognize in you. And you need to hold that mirror up and look at yourself for the beautiful soul that you are, because you inspire us. And I hope you realize that, Sue, you do the same by holding up the message and making sure that people can be heard, and as well as the road that you have had to walk. No easy roads that lead us here. However, we can share in the experience of change and do the best that we can to use our voices, because I know I'm a white male and I've used my white maleness to affect the change that I have, because I can. I grew up in being the only white kid in my neighborhood growing up in New Orleans. And I never forgot that I grew up poor. But even while growing up poor, my mother had a son. She not only did she marry a blind guy, my brother was born without eyeballs. So
Oh,
what
wow.
did she do? She started the first organization for parents who had children that were born blind, because it didn't exist. And out of that, she started the first blind radio station run by the blind for the blind in New Orleans. That's still running to this day, all while dealing with a special blind and autistic child. She also then sued the state of Louisiana to have the right of transportation for every blind and deaf kid to go to the state school, because the state of Louisiana refused to fund it, and fuck you if you think we're gonna. And, so I was able to have a great teacher to show me that, you can go from somebody who should just have a normal life, that you can be thrust into a limelight just trying to do the best for the person that you love. And so I've been able to see that from being a child, and then as an adult, I got to see others in my movement, like you, Jim, and what you did for Cheryl, be another beacon of an example of how to accept one of the hardest things you'll ever do in your life with a grace and humility that would end up being a teaching point for others. So you had a great deal of fear, and we respect that greatly, because you walked it and you walked through the fire, and we will forever recognize that. And that is part of what we take in what Michael and I do at the national level and what we do at the international level. So thank you.
Wow. Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. See that? Thank you.
Yeah, really. It's sort of like I have a hard time
It's okay.
trying to figure
We
out.
love you and we thank you.
To me, it's like what I did was get scared, and then I did things like walk, talk. What? I didn't juggle. I didn't do math that other people do. I didn't write the
Yeah. But you know how many other people are paralyzed that didn't do
anybody
anything?
could do that. Everybody, well, people who are physical enough could do that. And the thing is, it's sort of like if I didn't get pushed at times by modifying force that Cheryl was at one point when I reached my breaking point, which I reached more than a few times. Well, not of the real breaking point, And I remember I was just so frustrated. It wasn't about Cheryl; it was about something going on, and it was with her, and it wasn't being comfortable, and it was all wrong, and we didn't have any cannabis. And I said, I ought to take this wheelchair, put it on my fucking shoulders, and walk across the state with it. And it was like, don't be. I don't know if she said stupid. I'll remember it as silly, because she wouldn't say stupid. But anyway, don't be so stupid. It's got wheels. Oh, that was like really the short way to fucking pull me right the fuck back, And then,
Humor,
I
in a tough situation.
did the math. I took a ride on what would be the route, found it was 58 miles. And I knew that I walked 2.5 miles an hour.
Jim, you seem to forget that there's thousands of other people that chose not to do the things that you did.
Yeah.
That chose to hide. that
Yeah.
choose to let their people suffer.
Okay, my biggest fear is realizing I could have done something and knew about it, and realize when it's too late I should have done or I could have. And I have so few of that, because I guard against that. That's the dividing point. What would happen if I don't do it? And basically it's like the bad end is never, it's never that bad. It's something I'd rather not go through, no doubt, at the end of it. But
You found your strength along the way, how strong you really were and are. And that's
scary.
something that most people will never have that chance to have that road, much less walk that journey, much less lead by example. That's how special you are. I just want to reiterate.
Well, as you would, I appreciate it so much. You got to know that, but you also got to know that it comes with a price.
Of course. That's why you're held in such respect. The price is
Yeah,
something nobody wants to pay. The price is something no one ever wants to have on their soul, but you endured it with a grace.
Yeah,
And
well,
that
it endured pretty
you
much,
do.
but yeah, enduring. There's like, I don't have that classic PTSD diagnosis. I've never been diagnosed. I've never told anybody any truths like that about me. I don't know if I could. So I've been relying on self-diagnosis, and I have arguments with myself. Kathy, I could be quiet. No, like what? I'm sorry. It'd be like, because when I know and I recognize the right thing, I have this momentary conflict, and it's like jump, dive, and I do, and yeah, an outcome, and in the process, I'm not in a hurry when I drive somewhere. I try to. It doesn't matter, and I don't play I never played the radio when I'm driving, because my carnival in my head is my own company. But yeah, it's come with a price, but it's also come with a history that, without being like real particular, if Senator President Scutari wanted to know kind of what road could be taken, I have a reference. That would be Congressman Frank Pallone. That if he simply called and said, "Listen, Jim Miller said I should be Jim." Well, yeah, he said I should be in. Why? What's he? Yeah, Frank Pallone could set him straight that actually he was had a moment like that himself, and he took the wrong path. Next thing you know, which wasn't the next thing you know, is outside his house with Cheryl's Memorial wheelchair and a sign on it, pacing the 28 steps to his home on Ocean, 1175 Ocean Avenue, right on the ocean, in Longbridge. And yeah, because I had the right to do that and make a short story even shorter. There was nothing he could do about it, and it worked out great. And then that was all because he was voting yes on the thing that California Congressman Jim Rosen was also voting on. So it was like bitching about the same thing. And there's no reason Frank Pallone should have been. So when I send my second to his office, who was a constituent, saying, I would wipe the slate clean with him if he just took a pass and didn't vote on the bill. And what happened is he went there and told them that, and then 2 weeks later, it turned out he voted against it. In other words, he flipped his vote entirely and voted against it. I haven't talked with him since. That's a great reference. So the thing is, suppose Senate President got in touch with him before deciding what to do. Should he become aware that maybe Jim was planning to Billy Jack him, like there's nothing you can do about it. And just let's suppose, for shits and grins, his police in his district were informed by an Esquire that Jim Miller, here's what he's going to do, and no knee-jerk reaction. He just, wants 20 minutes time of Senator Scutari on a Zoom meeting and we can all go home happy. Well, why would anybody go to any lengths to avoid that for 20 minutes? It's a freaking conversation, not even with me. I want to take that out, so you can't use that as an excuse. I want to open that door. And, it's what I really hope is there is a chance, think about it, he'd go, okay, wait a minute. You can't use Frank Pallone I could call him and he knows it. And I would hope that he does. But I would think that might trigger something in him to think, okay, I got to drop this rope. I got to do something. He could get me to step back by doing anything at all. He didn't have to say, okay, when and where and who do I talk with? We could sign a memorandum of understanding on how we would work this out, and then he could push that can down the road. A memorandum of understanding. That's funny. I'm associating him to federal level shit at all I can. As a matter of fact, I've got in trouble with that with some of my close allies on the good side. I don't know. I think I need an all-shoot religion here or something. I'm just saying. It's really hard. Anyway, Sativa Cross is pretty much where I ended up landing doing most of my work. It was fun co-founding the Coalition for Medical Marijuana New Jersey, and it's in great hands with Ken Walsky. They do a lot of good shit. They just sometimes need somebody like me to open a door for them. So, here I am. It's like we're being a clubhouse and all, but, we're going to have somebody watching over us and we're setting goals, and we'll see where we can get. Thing is with Lefty, you don't know. Is he still around?
I don't know. But 18 needs to go to dinner.
Well, anyway, he might be leaving it to us to end the podcast. He's done that before.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It could get out of hearing the list, and I'd do anything to get out of it. I know this. I'll look it up. I'll say it myself later. But anyway, I got a road not yet traveled tonight, and I got to run. So, Lefty, it doesn't work when you shout, Jim.
Nah, he doesn't hear us.
There you are.
There he is.
Oh, hey.
There he is.
Man, he had this way Jesus laying down. It freaked me out for a second. What the hell?
No, he's got his pillow behind him.
He was on the snooze button.
You have a website that people can find you, or a way?
Veterans Action Council at gmail.com, veteransactioncouncil.com. That's where we can be found. So I'm also the letters ATN 420 on Instagram, and Etienne Fontaine on LinkedIn. Most of our work is, again, the work that I'm doing now is through, of course, Veterans Action Council and the work that we're doing nationally. So there'll be an article coming out here on the marijuana moment by us. It'll be the one by Mary Lynn Mathry, because she's also part of our group. So I've got a very stellar all-star team of people who I work with. So I'm very fortunate to have other shoulders of giants that I get to work alongside as well. So alongside Michael. So we're going to keep doing what we do. So y'all keep doing what you're doing. And I can't thank you enough for inviting me on and sharing this time and space. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, stick around.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And stick around if you care to for the list and the Ode to Remembrance thing. And would I be correct in assuming that there might be some way we could talk you into coming back again?
Absolutely. Just let me know. I can peel away the time, and happy to share talks and experience, as well as update you at any time on what's happening at the national and international level, because my finger's on those pulses. So, I tend to have my own perspective, but at the same time, I have a historical perspective to balance against that. I've been doing this for 30 plus years as a patient, and as a provider and a grower. So I'm very fortunate to wear many different hats, but Fortunately, the one my veteran hat is the one that seems to be opening all the doors. So I'm going to use that to effect the change I can in the time frame that I've given.
There you go. That's the way to work it.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time.
No, look forward to the next time, beautiful people.
Yep.
Um,
I'll be in touch. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, we will.
Thank you, CMMNJ, UFCW, Arlo Glass, OpenMachine.com, and SativaCross.org. Our list begins. We ring our bell now. Ever since we did a show on September 11th, and we decided to start ringing the bell for the names.
Yeah. It separates it somehow. I don't know. It's like it just works. You know, it really amplified it. It made it jump and it didn't blend. It staccatoed it rather than slurred through it. You know? So that's a musical version.
First on the list is Cheryl, Sabina, Diane, Gracie, Cindy Mae, Marie, Jack, Joan, Randy, Holly, Bill, Chad, Jeremy, Colette, Matt, Troy, Russ, Roger, Jay, Ella, Jack, Anthony, Jake, Mo, Alicia, Lynn, Dan, Sean, Joyce, Lori, Frank, Paul, Flo, Thorne, Frank, Lorraine, Terry, Charlotte, Cher, Jaybird, Michael, Marley, Colette, Brendan, Red, Rico, Lou, Becky, Yolanda, Chip, Paul, Lisa, Marcus, Gary, Julia, Wayne, Waxy, Joe Marie, Paul, Jeff.
Miss them all.
Are we missing the late great Wayne Bree's voice? No.
This concludes our podcast.
This concludes our podcast.
That would be that you don't. We have a really wait. This concludes our podcast.
This concludes our podcast.
Oh, that was good. That was good. Yeah, but he became a member of the list after listening to it be recited for 10 years. He listened to it be recited to be on it. And Johnny generally remembers him with a quick flash of his picture, which is nice, you know. So you're gonna ode us on.
Guys, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will
We will remember that.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, peace out, everybody.